Hey, let's continue on this little quick short journey hopping through times in history that significant things happened with significant musicians and singers and songwriters that stepped up and started making their mark. Let's jump back and come out of the early 1900s. We're going to push forward now. By the time we get into the roaring 20s, you know, there's particular musical styles being explored. That's when you hear ragtime and roaring 20s and all these things really making an impact. And by the way, some of you guys, we'll maybe dig into this a little later, but ragtime, of course, the first ragtime, we think of Joplin and all those guys, when actually the very first ragtime music was played in a hotel in Middlesboro, Kentucky, believe it or not, close to Cumberland Gap. But now the speakeasies and prohibition and all that's giving way to a whole new rebellious party way of exploring life. Lots going on in Europe in the 20s. Radio is starting to happen here. The recording industry is being birthed. All these things are happening, and up steps these brand new voices being brought out that were not new voices at all, come to find out. They were actually carrying the sounds of the Scots-Irish sound and the Welsh sound, the land of song. And they were carrying those sounds. They had carried them into the isolation of the Appalachian Mountains. And then when John Peer Music and OK Records, they came down and into those mountains and started discovering all these hidden nuggets. And if you've ever seen a movie, it's called The Song Catcher. You ought to watch that. In those days, these guys carried what was called the Presto Insta recording machines, and they would carry them on horseback or whatever to make their way into the mountains onto somebody's porch and listen to songs and record songs that had been lost for some of them as much as 200 years, that had been so-called lost to culture, but actually they had been being passed from generation to generation in the hiddenness and the isolation of those mountains. And that's where you hear songs like there in Middlesboro, Kentucky. There was what was his name, John and Alan Lomax, when they went there to record these closed culture songs, walked up on the porch and asked this little girl, said, "Hey there, sweetie, could you sing to me the saddest song you know?" And she stopped, just this little teenager girl, she just stopped for a half a second. And she said, "My mother was a tailor. She sewed my new blue jeans. My father was a gambling man down in New Orleans." Started singing these songs. Now this is on through the 20s and 30s. And she's reaching back to songs that had been hidden in those mountains. Of course, they made their way to the Smithsonian and all that, and got captured in those days. They were capturing these sounds and archiving them away and the Smithsonian and stuff. And then later, of course, in the 60s, then the Animals came out with House of the Rising Sun. In the early days, it was called House of the Rising Sun Blues. The point is music comes back and it goes away, it comes back and it goes away. And sometimes it's hidden in these little pockets of culture. And I've got this old map from I think it's from the 20s or the 30s, where these musicologists spread all the way across the land of the United States, all these little pockets of culture, and they named the musical styles and the sounds and the instruments that would have been indigenous to those regions. And so studies go back even into those days of trying to find the sounds and the songs of the peoples that inhabited the lands, because that whole idea, you can track those sounds and songs of the land through the Appalachian culture of our nation all the way back to the Tabernacle of David. I've done it chronologically. I've identified the instruments and the sounds through the regions and seasons of time, how the sound has moved from the Tabernacle of David there in Jerusalem on that ridge where the Ark of the Covenant would have sat during the days of the Tabernacle of David. I've tracked that sound all the way down through the mountains and into now. Well, by the time it made its way into this Southern American culture and Americana music was being birthed, if you will, then you have these guys that would step up and really make their mark. Like in the 40s, there's a boy from Alabama steps onto the stage of the Grand Ole Opry. His name is Hank Williams. Hank Williams experienced a supernatural encounter of some sort on the stage of the Ryman Auditorium the first time he was there. They introduced him. He walked onto the stage, and there were blue lights around him, and there were no blue lights on the stage. There were only footlights. They cast us blue lights were cast around him like a halo, and it was as if when he started singing Lovesick Blues, it was as if he was like a coat. He was a skinny, lanky boy behind the guitar, and it was as if he were taking a coat and a coat hanger and just hovering almost in a supernatural way around the microphone, he said, as he began to sing. And they almost had to sign off. The only time in the history of the Grand Ole Opry, they almost had to sign off because off the air, which was a live radio show, they almost had to sign off the air because the audience went into such a frenzy they could not get the audience back under control. And there were so many encores that they just literally didn't know what to do with what had happened in the room. And of course, Hank Williams is from Wales, the land of song. Or his family blood goes back to Wales, where the land of, which is called the land of song. There's a whole lot more we're going to explore on that little idea. But anyway, he was the first of the rock and roll, lived the rock and roll lifestyle before rock and roll. And as you know, he was fatherless. He had a lot of physical pain in his back. He was in a lot of misery, and the bottle became his road companion, if you will. And he began to write the language of lonesome. And I'm so lonesome I could cry. It was all about drinking and cheating and all the stuff. And he presented new. See, prior to that, many musicologists believe that that's where country music, if you will, lost its innocence, and because it was now it moved in not into adulthood but into adulteryhood, and it was about singing and cheating and drinking and all this stuff. Well, those were not new ideas to the musicians, but it's just now that they were celebrated. And just like back in the 20s when radio came into there and record industry came into there, now they're celebrating this cultural sound, and as a result they wind up with new terminology. They're celebrities. Who are these celebrities? There are cousins down the road that sing on the porch are suddenly now singing on the box, and everybody had a battery radio, and now stars were being born. And their dreams were being fulfilled, and where there's dreams being fulfilled, there are also dreams that are being broken. And so the harshness of life, the good, the bad, and the ugly, starts to show up in the musical expressions of that culture. And pretty soon it's pretty much out of control. And of course, Hank Williams laid the foundation for other innovators to step in with new and totally new expressions. There's where you have Elvis Presley comes onto the scene. Now, in our very next time we get together, I want to take this. We're going to take it one more step, and we're going to go from Hank to Elvis to the Beatles, and I want to show you how things began to heat up at that point in history. See you later.
Thanks for watching. If you've been blessed by this program, please consider partnering with us in prayer or through a financial gift. Learn more by visiting our website at selaministries.com.